In the mid-19th century, the United States tried to steal an island off the Dominican coast because it was full of poop. Bird poop. By the early 1800s, farming became the backbone of the United States economy. But the soil suffered, so farmers started looking for ways to fertilize their land. A miracle fertilizer was discovered: bird poop. Well, more known as guano. Because in case you have noticed, birds poop a lot. That means wherever you find a lot of birds, you're gonna find a lot of poop. And if they pooped at a certain place for hundreds and hundreds of years, you will find tons of poop. And I mean mountains of it. Poop. I just like saying poop. Expect lots of juvenile poop jokes. A virtual guano gold rush sprang up. Within a few years, those who had the crappiest places became rich. Guano became the petroleum of the decade. And yeah, wars were fought over it. That's right, people killed each other over poop. American explorers went around the Caribbean looking for poop. And close to our coast, they found two: Navassa Island and Alto Velo. In 1854, a group of Americans landed on Alto Velo, they raised the US flag, and began digging for poop. It wasn't long before two Dominican warships arrived under the command of Admiral Juan Alejandro Acosta, one of the founding fathers of the Trinitarios and the first Dominican admiral. And he semi-politely kicked them and the US flag from the island. These sort of grab as much poop as you can and run incidents happened all over the Caribbean. And in few cases, the US was able to establish a permanent guano supply. On Navassa Island, for example, they managed to bring in a colony of miners, complete with a little town and a church and even some railway tracks. But it wasn't enough poop. Something needed to be done. The situation became so, poopy, that President Millard Fillmore began his first State of the Union address promising better poop prices. Now, this was the time of the Civil War in the US, the time of manifest destiny, the time of the Monroe Doctrine, a time in which the US was gathering all of its self-confidence to establish itself as the dominant power in the Western Hemisphere, destined by God to rule it all, as soon as they could come to an agreement over the whole slavery issue. In 1856, Fillmore enacted one of the most poopiest laws in US history, the Guano Island Act. Simply put, the law gives any US citizen the right to claim as American soil any island anywhere in the world as long as it has guano on it and was uninhabited and outside of any other nation's jurisdiction. But the last part was open to interpretation, as we'll find out. Now, before you could say, that duty smells like imperialism, the schooner Boston set sail for Alto Velo, run by the Baltimore company Patterson and Murriendo. In February 1860, they landed at Alto Velo and claimed it as US poop, the soil, US soil. About 12 men, along with their tents and gear and a donkey. They even hired Haitian fishermen to bring them water from next door Beata Island. As far as the Americans were concerned, Alto Velo now belonged to the US Empire. Even the Haitian fishermen had to ask for permission to fish in the area. So naturally, the question comes up, who owned Alto Velo? Like, for real? Well, Columbus sighted it on his second voyage, who thought that it looked like a Alto Velo, a tall sail, and the name stuck. It is located just 8 miles south from Beata Island, which puts it clearly in Dominican waters. I mean, not even Haiti was claiming it as their own. But the truth is that nobody really cared about it much. To this day, most Dominicans don't even know that island exists, beyond maybe a quick mention in geography class or so. And back then, even less knew about it. Besides, Dominican President Pedro Santana was way too busy returning the country back to Spain, so there was really no time to worry about a tiny little island of maybe a mile long, filled with millions of birds and a couple of seals. Yeah, there used to be seals there, but yeah, that's a different story. Anyway, after a while, word got around to Santo Domingo that a few Americans were pooping around the island, and the Dominican schooner Merced was dispatched to investigate. A Dominican officer came ashore and asked, what are you doing here? The Americans told him that, we're digging for bird poop, and that they had claimed the island in the name of the United States. And the officer was obviously kind of confused over the whole thing by seeing a group of Americans with bird poop all over them, and asked for a couple of samples, and then took these samples and went back to Santo Domingo. It took about a month for the Dominican government to react, mostly because the incident seemed so strange. Why would Americans just show up out of nowhere, claim an island that clearly belonged to the DR, and steal all the bird poop? Again, the Merced returned with soldiers, and the commanding general asked the Americans in not so friendly terms to leave within the next 24 hours. The Americans refused, since, this was legally stolen American soil now, and they had the paperwork to prove it. Now, the Guano Act documents that they presented made absolutely no impression. The general sent 50 men ashore who knocked over the tents, collected the equipment, confiscated the donkey, arrested the 12 Americans, and tossed them into jail in Santo Domingo for about a week before they were returned to the US Embassy. Now, this treatment did not sit so very well with Patterson Murguendo, the company behind this enterprise. So they tried to sue the Dominican government, because according to them, nobody ever lived on that island ever, so, it's up for grabs, right? According to the Guano Act, the US government had to back them up, with military force if need be, so they sent lawyers to the government. And then they sued Webster & Co., another company that moved onto the island after them. Except somehow Webster & Company had suddenly gotten the mining rights from the Dominican government, and within just 7 months, Webster mined the island for everything that it was worth before they were asked to leave as well. Over 10,000 tons of guano were removed, which not just changed the physical appearance of the island, it also scared away a lot of the birds. And the seals haven't been seen since. So Patterson Murguendo sued them as well, because that's how America works, you sue people. For years the case was pushed around but never won, simply because Alto Velo was obviously an island belonging to the Dominican Republic. That meant they had the mining rights. Strangely enough, the Dominicans never decided to mine it themselves. Instead, they kicked off Patterson Murguendo, then gave permission to Webster, and in 1876 to a French company for another 10,000 tons, so about 20,000 tons of bird poop were stolen from that island. But Patterson and Murguendo never retracted their claim. So, to this day, the island is still officially claimed by the US government, because the Guano Act is still a law in the US. So, just in case, the Dominicans put a lighthouse on top of the hill, should the Americans ever get any funny ideas. Again. And you may think that the whole Guano Island Act thing is a thing of the past, but remember the second island the Americans claimed, Navassa Island? Well, it lies within Haitian waters. But Haiti never had the chance to kick out the Americans, and to this day, it is considered US territory. Sometimes history is just full of guano. Thanks guys for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get notified when new episodes come out. Also, thanks a lot to our Patreon supporters over here. Okay. Thanks to you guys, we can actually do these videos, and I hope you enjoyed this short little history lesson. All the best to you, and abur mi gente.